Thank you for your patience. And Baruchim Habayim, welcome to our ongoing field trip to the Garden of Eden. I hope everybody packed lunches. And I assume everyone has their parental permission slips. Yes. Last week we spoke also about the sod, the secret. We spoke about the secret of conversion from Parashat Yitro. And essentially what we learned from that, and I assume everybody can hear me okay? Yes, okay, thank you. That Torah is revealing a magnificent concept, and that is the whole world is converting. Everything is in a constant stage of conversion. But truly, as it's well known in the Jewish tradition, one does not convert, for example, one does not convert to Judaism. Rather, one returns to Judaism, and we know that this more specifically is referring to what? One is returning to the body of Adam. And so, the Torah is revealing, in part through the story of Jethro, and his strange, ambiguous, ostensibly ambiguous status as a ger, as a convert. Is he or isn't he? That he's really setting a model for the various layers and levels of conversion. Everything is returning back to Adam. And thus everything is in a process of conversion. When you eat food, you're elevating out the sparks, the fractal sparks of divinity that are truly trapped in there. That's why we are drawn towards food, because unconsciously that apple is crying out, "Eat me, eat me. Elevate me, please, redeem me. I'm trapped in this apple. And I'm really trapped in this Ben and Jerry's." Or was it the Haagen-Dazs? So before we continue, I just wanted to field if there's any questions regarding this concept from last week, or any observations. If you do, feel free to share them. Now, before we go further into the garden, and we left off in our last cliffhanging episode of Adam in the garden, that there are three layers, three stages of the eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And remember, it's your responsibility to be retranslating in your head when you hear all of these words. Meaning, when I say Garden of Eden, you have to be saying, thinking, envisioning, visualizing in some way or another, hyper Garden of Eden. When I say Adam is a man, and when you immediately think of a human being, you got to imagine it's a picture of a human being with one of those lines going across, like no human images, no Homo sapiens allowed in here. There were no Homo sapiens in the higher dimensional Garden of Eden. There was a sign at the entrance.
For all those outside.
For all the outsiders. And when I say the word fruit, every time I can't redefine it and qualify it. We are in flat land. We're in a lower dimension, three-dimensional reality here, and our thinking is flat and three-dimensional, but we can still use these terms. That's the beauty of the Torah. It's astounding how the Torah, the words of the Torah, in this case here in the story of Genesis, it can be describing all these things and they're not even taking place here. That's amazing. But it's no more amazing than simply if I draw a square that it's representing a cube. You don't see the cube. You just see a square. But you know it's representing the cube. And as we said, it's even more extreme here. The Torah is describing all the events with Adam and Chava and the Eitz Hadat and the Nachash. Imagine that these descriptions are no more than line drawings, as a line is being used to represent a square, which is being used to represent a cube, which is being used to represent a hypercube, which is being used to represent a hypercube. And that's the section we read to you from the Leshem, how each level is an exact replica of the one above, but it is scaling itself down, each time losing what we would call depth. Just as a cube, when you now represent it as a square, it lost its depth. And then when you draw a line to represent the square to represent the cube, it's lost another layer of depth. In this case, it had the ability to move horizontally and vertically, and now it can only move horizontally. It lost that depth. Do you see what depth is here? It's just another dimension, another direction. And I cannot overemphasize this. This is the true secret to understanding everything in the Torah. The Torah is describing a hyper-dimensional reality where these events originally took place. Now notice, for those that are keen with their senses and your ability to think and to catch what's going on, even those terms that we just used, saying that the events are describing the story of Adam is describing actual events that took place in the higher dimensional Garden of Eden, took place. You see that? That itself is a klipa, a incrustation of dimensionality, is a husk, a shell, a membrane curtain that is veiling, blocking the full picture. Because time as we know it in linear movement, past and future, did not come into existence until when? Until the collapse of time and space. Until the collapse of Adamic consciousness. This is not mythology. This is not mystical thinking. This is the Peshat, the literal meaning of what has occurred. And that is why all the events in the Torah, even those, and especially those in Genesis, are describing actual literal events, word by word, letter by letter. It is literally true. And in this way, if you've ever had a secret desire to be a fundamentalist Christian, you can. You can believe absolutely that the Bible, every single word, is true. What's that term called?
Fundamentalism or literalism?
Literalism? No, there's another word. When you believe the Bible is
Inerrant.
Inerrant. There you go. Thank you. Inerrant. That the Bible is inerrant. Because, as we read to you from the Leshem and the Ramchal, it is literally true, but where is it literally true? Those events did not take place in this land. And all this attempt to find the physical Garden of Eden, that's such a Goisha trip. It's the same thing, essentially, as Santa Caterina, the monastery that's built supposedly on Mount Sinai.
Yep.
Which, even by simple accounts, cannot be, because they picked the highest mountain, and our oral Torah tells us that, in fact, Mount Sinai was one of the lowest mountains out of its humility. Yes, exactly. All right. So so I said one of the methodologies, and let me emphasize here again, you cannot learn Torah if you are not learning how to learn. And you don't just learn how to learn in the beginning, and then you go on now learning Torah, and you're just absorbing content. If you are not constantly learning, in other words, applying methodology to what you are learning, then you will not be learning Torah. You'll be gathering information, but ultimately it will remain the Bible or the Old Testament or Sunday school stories. The mind must be engaged. You must have, there is a methodology to learning Torah, and it has to do with that. It's not so much what you're looking at, the way you're looking from. And you're only going to be able to look at things from a different perspective if you're constantly analyzing not only what you're looking at, but analyzing your own thought processes, how you are observing, and on what surface is your concept being projected upon. Without realizing it, as we said, we believe like Christians and we think like Greeks. That never fails to elicit a chuckle.
Spiritual schizophrenia.
It's a kind of an embarrassing self-realization that, oops. Remember how that goes, that line? Okay, you should have this one memorized by now. We, in our lack of initiation, in our fallen state, in our primitive state, we believe like Christians. I'm talking. This is even most Jews. secular Jews, non-observant Jews, non-Torah Jews, if you're not constantly learning, engaging, digging in with the mind and learning how your mind operates, then your belief system will be, we're believing like Christians. You just take Jesus out of it. That it's something much more evolved than that. So we believe like Christians, we think like Greeks, and we wanna be pagans at heart. It's like I'll be a Christian in the church or synagogue. I'll be a Greek in school and university. But at home and in the streets, it's paganism. Well, in Torah, you can have all three.
Cool.
But they will be qualified, and they will be revamped and overhauled. So, we left off at the three stages, and the first stage was called in the Hebrew, it's called the histaklut. It's the mental conceptualization. It really means from the word staring, or penetrating, but it's penetration with the mind. And Adam was investigating the nature of the other side, of what's known as the achoraim, the backside, or the sitra achara, the term used in the Zohar and the Kabbalah, the other side. That's what it means, sitra achara, the other side, and also known as the el acher, the other God. The other God. Now, we're going to now take a look at the phenomenon of the El Acher, the other God. What was it that Adam was so curious about? And we're using that word very, very loosely. This was not a case of, curiosity killed the cat. This was not idle curiosity. Adam was on a mission. And here's the rhetorical question. And this is part of the methodology. If you're asking a question and you're looking for an answer, that's not the way of Torah. Every question must be a rhetorical question, because you question not to get answers, but you question to probe. You don't even want an answer, you rather want to just go to a deeper level that enables you now to ask a new rhetorical question to probe deeper and deeper. The question is, what was Adam probing? Because the rhetorical question, you think it's a question, but really it's a rhetorical question. And that is, what the heck did Adam think he was doing? Right? If God told you, don't eat from this tree, and you say, okay. And then God says, you know what? Don't look too intently into it either. Now, I'm not forbidding you to do this. It's not in the same nature of I'm telling you, do not eat. It is not a clear, explicit injunction. It is not a prohibition. But come on, if God told you, hey, Adam, take my advice. Been there, done that. Been there, done that. In the previous layer of reality, in the primordial worlds, been there, done that, and trust me. Yeah. Now, if God told you, gave you advice, I would call that sagely advice. So you would listen. But yet Adam, he superseded that advice, and he went on a profound experimental exploration into the El Acher, the other God. Now, why was he doing this? This is the question. Of course, you can ask the question, why did Adam eat from the tree of knowledge? At every stage you can ask. But we want to really turn it into a rhetorical question, and part of the resolution is this. Adam was attempting to accelerate the process of tikkun. Remember, this was not a paradise. This was not the end of creation. It's a part of the process. And Adam was placed in the garden le'avda u'le'shamra, to work it and to guard it. And he had a heck of a lot to do before sunset on the sixth day, known as Friday today. He had a heck of a lot to do. And Adam was attempting to accelerate the process. And part of his, we're just looking at a little bit, part of his investigation into the other God was to find a way to accelerate the completion of creation. Susan asked the question, did Adam not have fears as we know? Did not have fear as we know it. Adam didn't have anything as we know it. Anything you think of Adam immediately is a projection. Even that, and that, and that too. It's like, don't think of pink elephants. Anything you think about Adam and Eve and the serpent and the garden, I can guarantee you, until you've spent years of being deprogrammed, automatically the mind is just going to, because you have nothing else to use. We can only imagine from our own experience. But Adam did not have fear as we do. Yet in ratio, and I hope you are appreciating this principle, in ratio, everything we have, Adam had. Because remember, the line is in perfect ratio to the square, to the cube, to the hypercube. When you take the globe and of Earth, and you flatten it out, the map, okay, and we've all seen this. You get flat maps. And what happens, and they really only solved this problem relatively recently, in the last few decades, because I remember growing up in school, remember those big maps of the world on the wall? Yeah. And Australia was this huge continent, as was Greenland. Yeah, and that's not true. That is a distortion. But the latitude and the longitudinal, thank you. The latitudinal and longitudinal. The coordinates are still exactly the same. You see that? So you see how there can be distortion, yet it's still maintained in ratio. And this is what we read to you last time, that one world collapses into the layer below it. It totally gets squashed and flattened out relative to the state it was previously in, but it still retains the exact coordinates. This is astounding. And this is part of the belief in the God of Israel, that whatever existed in the higher level exists now. Whatever will exist in the future exists in part now. The ratio of that is here. And we can follow it backwards. And that's why all the laws in the Torah, for example, even the ones that seem archaic and sexist and patriarchal and anachronistic and boring, all of these can be followed back into the Garden of Eden, the higher dimension, in perfect ratio. So you see how it's literally true? And yet, it is not true in this dimension. In its the root of these things are in the higher dimension. The other God. Now, yes.
I wanted to know if he was studying or perceiving the other God to, was that part of the complete rectification? I mean, it had to be part of something previous, otherwise it wouldn't have been there.
Yes, it was definitely part. The other God was the remnant of, it was the cosmic radioactive fallout from the tohu. The tohu being what? Yes. Being the layer, the strata of the reality that Ma'aseh Bereshit, that Genesis is constructed upon and branching out of. And the other God, or it's a cosmic virus, and this is what we're going to take a look at and explore right now. And incidentally, as we're coming up to the festival of Purim, Haman is from the seed of Amalek. And Amalek, the Amalekites, is the human manifestation of the other God. Now, the Zohar says, El aher istarez v'la aved tibin. In Aramaic, it says, the other God is sterile. It cannot reproduce. And it has no desire to reproduce. Now, I'm going to read to you from an astounding article in Discover magazine. March 2006, cover article. It's entitled, Are Viruses the Mother of All Life? Oh my gosh, I just realized. Whoa. Hey, you know this other picture that we showed you of Adam, made out of all the parts? So the cover of this let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Oh, I don't think I brought it up actually. Let's see here. Yeah. One second. I have it. I pull it up here. Yeah. All right. This atom is starting to fall apart here. But on the front cover of this Discover magazine, they did the same thing, but it's the face of Charles Darwin. and he's made out of little pictures of monkeys. No. Close. He's made out of little pictures of viruses. You'll see why as I read the article, which is very this is astounding.
Commentary.
This is this is very, very telling. See, when you learn the Torah, you start learning to see Torah teachings everywhere. You see, look at everything through Torah eyes, and everything is teaching you something, even if it's in the klipa, even if it's coming from something that is ostensibly negative and bad. If you know how, and you learn, you turn it in this way and that way, you pull out even on just one spark of the fallen life force in there, and you have participated in the act of Pidyon Shavuyim, redemption of the captive, which is in Judaism is by far one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mitzvot that can be performed, is redeeming one who has been imprisoned. Now, I'm going to read to you some sections, just some actually different lines that I underlined in this article. And we're going to see a uncanny parallelism here to understanding the nature of the other God, which is literally the cosmic virus. Few things on earth are spookier than viruses. Now, let me emphasize, this is a case in point. This is coming from a popular science magazine that is clearly and belligerently anti-religious. And in fact, they are using this article, its whole point, they're using this information precisely to try to show, again, there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing that there is a coherent underlying order to reality, but rather it is just all anarchy, and they're turning it around now with its new discovery, which is this is a very radical discovery. This is a paradigm shift in how biologists and evolutionists understood the world. And the article is called Unintelligent Design. Get it? You hear that clear rub there? Unintelligent design. So, they have, what they're doing with the information is one thing. What we do with it is another. And here we're going to do a little bit of the act of redeeming the captive. Few things on earth are spookier than viruses. The very name virus, from the Latin word, is from the Latin word for poisonous slime. Now listen to this. The term that the sages have been using from time immemorial for what affected, what took, remember the Nachash was originally a good guy. And also, don't you try to look at that Nachash. Don't, he was not a serpent with legs. The fact that it's called a serpent is, sometimes you want to refer to someone derogatory, you call him a reptile, right?
Yeah.
Is he a reptile? No. The fact that the Nachash, the serpent is called the Nachash, he was far more than a reptile. And if you believe me, if you can't begin to imagine when Adam and Chava were like, you can't imagine what this Nachash was like. In any event, it was holy, and it got infected. It got infected by a cosmic virus. Who let it in? It was hermetically sealed. And that was the diagram that we had up here just a moment ago. Let's see, where did it go? Where did it go? Oh, I think I have an idea. Not that one. Huh. Did it go? Let's see here. 1 second. Yeah, here we go. This one. Remember, we're at Friday afternoon in the garden. Friday afternoon in the garden. And what this represents is Adam and Chava were in the green, Gan, okay, which is really the Malchut. It's the lower 10th aspect of the higher dimension that was protruding into a lower dimension. And it was about to, it really was the feet of the higher dimension were sticking down below, and they were pulling up. And that would have been the completion of the process. Now this, the feet that were sticking out was where it's the red. And then where it's white, in each one of these, there was 10 units, 10 spaces. That was the mote, cosmic mote. And then there was the virus. Then there was the realm of the virus, which was 14 units long. You see how every molecule, every atom, pun intended, in the garden looked like this. But you see, there was no way the virus, which occupied this area of 14 units of the gray, no way it could get inside. There was that white barrier. So, how did it get inside? How did it attack that poor holy serpent? He was just minding his own business. He was just trying to be a good serpent servant. And he got contaminated and went crazy. And then that's when he seduced Eve. Not before. This is important to realize. And so far we see that it was Adam. Adam's thought went into that gray area. Now, Adam wasn't in there. Adam never left the green, the malchut, or the red. But his thought went into the gray area, and then you see how he unintentionally created a mind bridge, and it traveled and got inside. Now, the term used for that virus, for the contamination that the sages have used, is called zuhama. Zuhama means spiritual slime. It means spiritual filth, poisonous slime. Almost the exact definition of the word virus coming from the Latin, virus. Less an organism than a jumbled collection of biochemical shards. Do you see how uncanny this is? It's staring them in the face. Shards? That's klipot. The virus was the cosmic virus was generated through the destruction of the primordial worlds. It was like when there's an atomic bomb. Okay, that's the bomb, that's the tow, but there's a residue, right? That's the contamination that's left over, the radioactivity. That's what this virus, in effect, was. And the discovery that it's a collection of biochemical shards, that the one who revealed that, he got a Nobel Prize in chemistry, but not in biology, because it has to do more. It's not exactly a living creature. It's not a living creature. What is it? It occupies something in between. The discovery also set off an intense scientific and philosophical debate that still rages. What exactly is a virus? Can it properly be described as alive? Life and living are words that the scientists had borrowed from the plain man. A British virologist wrote. Now, however, systems are being discovered and studied which are neither obviously living nor obviously dead. And it is necessary to define these words or else give up using them and coin others. And truly, this is all throughout Torah. You cannot use these Greek words of a this or a that. We have to give them up or coin new ones. The challenge continues to haunt science. So otherness are viruses, and this is what the Zohar describes. The sages say it's called the other. It's simply called the other. Because it's not, you can't call it a life form exactly, but it's not exactly a dead form. So it's the other. They're so other, these other things, that they're still trying to corral them with new metaphors. And here are some of the names. Now get this. Are you sitting down?
The new virus antidote.
They have coined new names. Okay? Now these are the biologists. Micro-zombies. Pirates of the Caribbean cells. No. Pirates of the cell. Submicroscopic hijackers. Why is this? You know what a virus is? Well, no one knows exactly what it is, but it cannot produce life of its own. It must hijack. It commandeers a host cell, and then it uses the reproductive system. It uses the life force of the host cell to reproduce itself. It cannot reproduce itself at all. And not only that, it has no desire. It will sit there dormant forever and ever and ever until a curious human being comes along and says, well, I wonder what that is. I wonder how that works. Shades of Alien. Now you see why you have to see that one. It's, if you get through, it's only 5 minutes. 5-minute segment of the first Alien movie. And then you will have redeemed Hollywood. Because it is the other, this is what the Torah calls it, literally the other God. But even more restrained characterizations betray a long-standing prejudice. Most biologists typically recognize 3 official branches of life. Okay, let's see here. I'm looking through here. The sheer prevalence of viruses, however, is forcing a reconsideration of how these entities fit into the biological world. Researchers have characterized some 4,000 viruses from several thousand distinct families. Yet, that is a tiny fraction of the number of viruses on Earth. They believe they've only documented less than 1% of all the living things on the planet. But for every organism, in that unidentified 99%, at least 10 times as many unknown viruses are thought to exist. The vast majority of which are harmless to life and yet integral to it. Now, with the recent discovery of a truly monstrous virus, scientists are again casting about for how to best to characterize these spectral life forms. The new virus, officially known as Mimi-virus. Mimi, M-I-M-I, because it mimics a bacterium. See, and this is what the sages tell us, that the other God mimics the human, the true human. And it describes it as an ape, aping the characteristics of the human. That's where we get that term from, to ape something, to mimic it. It's mimicking true life. And bear in mind this what we're going towards in the conclusion here is that all life as we know it, we are a hybrid, because that virus got into the Nachash, which got into Chava, which got into Adam, and out of that union came us. We are a direct product of a union between the virus and true divinity. It is a creature, the new virus is so bizarre that, unlike anything else seen by scientists, that it could qualify for a new domain. And now get this terminology this reporter, this atheist reporter used here. It could qualify for a new domain in the tree of life. We need some Twilight Zone background music here. Indeed, Mimi-virus is so much more generally complex than all previously known viruses, not to mention a number of bacteria, that it seems to call for a dramatic redrawing of the tree of life. Remember, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge are one and the same. There was only one tree. When it's in its singularity, higher dimension, it's called the tree of life. When it comes into a lower dimensionality and it splits, it begins to split, that's called the tree of knowledge of this or that. This thing shows that some viruses are organisms that have an ancestor that was much more complex than they are now. That ancestor is the contaminated serpent. That represents a radical change in thinking about life's origins. Viruses, long thought to be biology's hitchhikers, turn out to have been biology's formative force. See what they're doing here? It turns out all life as we know. This is what the scientists are now saying. This is a paradigm shift in our biological understanding of the very formative forces of life itself. Is that it is the origin of life. That's what they're saying here. See, but they're saying that all of life just came through this chaotic kaleidoscope that was caused by the mother of all life, which was a virus. You see how they're partially correct here? And to flesh it out, here's a rhetorical question. Adam calls the woman what? Chava, because she is the mother of all life. The commentaries point out that that's not what her name should be, because the mother of all life in Hebrew is Chaya. Chaya, which is a woman's Hebrew name. It also is the term used for a midwife, is a Chaya. And a Chaya is also an animal. But he should say, she is Chaya. Chai means life, is masculine. Chaya is life, feminine. Okay, like the Chai sign. Okay, it means life. Chaya is feminine for life. He should be calling her Chaya. Why does he call her Chava? Because her name was originally Chaya, before the serpent came into the scene. Because in Aramaic, the word for serpent is Chavya. And so, after she was contaminated, he calls her Chava because she incorporates now the contamination of the Nachash. So the mother of all life, where do we come from? Who is our Ima? Who is our mother? Hey, woo, we got a horror science fiction story here. Hey, would you like to meet your mother?
And your father.
And your father? You ready for that? With the discovery of Mimi, that's what the biologists affectionately call this new virus, which is the largest virus, bigger than any virus they ever thought can exist. Scientists are close to ascribing to viruses the last role that anyone would have conceived for them, that of life's prime mover. This is what the Torah has been teaching from the very beginning. This isn't true life. I mean, it's a warped form. We're a hybrid. It just all goes back to that Sunday school Bible story of Eve eating from the tree of knowledge after being seduced by the cosmic virus. Let me just read a little bit more, and I'll come back to the question. A few more lines here from this article. It is a difficult concept to get one's head around. Parasites to us are derivative, necessarily descendant from the biological entities they depend on for life. But simple does not always mean less evolved. Mimi's outsized complement of genes, so large that the virus is tantalizingly close to being an independent organism. It suggests to many scientists that Mimi virus underwent reductive evolution early on and shed some of its genome, including the genes necessary to replicate on its own. Okay, that's their speculation. We confer to these guys a nobility, a genealogy. Not only a genealogy, they are very ancestral. Viruses they're referring to in general, and their ancestors are at least contemporary with ours and those of all present-day life forms. The virus is the missing link. That's what the article says. Evolution's arch-villain looks more and more like its vital and formative force. If this is true, one of the geneticists said, of the viral nucleus hypothesis, then we are all basically descended from viruses. That's the Zuhama. That's the El Acher. The other god is sterile. It cannot reproduce itself. They're describing a cosmic virus. That's quite a big jump in our thinking about viruses, to go from there not even being organisms to being all of life's ancestor. High creative replication, genetic reproduction, and sorting of gene fragments, not to mention their eerie biochemical straddle between life and non-life. What was the very first bit of life's biochemical code, and where did it come from? It may be no surprise to learn that viruses figure ever so prominently into this line of speculation. Some researchers go so far as to suggest that the very first life on Earth could have arrived in the form of a viral shard. I didn't write this. A viral shard from a far away, perhaps conveyed in the core of a meteorite. Okay? You see, it's sitting there right in front. Just open up the story you learned in Sunday school. No, they came from a meteorite out there. But it is a viral shard. Shard means klipa. Virus is the elacher. This is it. Where did it come from? It didn't come from a meteorite. It came from the primordial world. It's what's left over from the Tohu. We are looking for our designer in all the wrong places. It seems we owe our existence to viruses, the least of semi-living forms. About the only thing they have in common with any sort of theological prime mover is their omnipotence and invisibility. Once again, viruses have altered the way that we view them, and by extension, ourselves. As it turns out, they are not a little breakaway shards of our biology. We are of theirs. And then in the editorial, at the beginning of the magazine, you know, they always have the editor writes a little something about some of the hot articles they have, in the issue. So listen to this. Where did it go? It should be in the very beginning. Yeah, it's getting a little... A letter from Discover, from the editor. And it's this whole thing about the Mimi virus, the largest virus ever discovered, which has totally altered our entire concept, not just of virus, but of life itself and where we come from. So he ends his editorial by saying, now there's news for intelligent designers and the rest of us to ponder. We humans and all of life on Earth may well have evolved from the most unintelligent entities one can imagine. Genetic shards. They do nothing but copy themselves. We are nobody's great idea. We are the fortunate mistakes of countless biochemical morons. That's evolution. It is humbling, but somehow comforting. Can you believe this? Among its many products, evolution has produced a court of law in which the science of evolution is not treated mindlessly. Now, we can get a little fractal glimpse of what Adam was investigating. He was looking into the structure of the other God, the cosmic virus. And he did so altruistically. He did so l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. This is important to emphasize. And other places we learn, because he was attempting to accelerate the cosmic tikkun process. Why he was attempting to accelerate it, what was the rush, that's another story. Let me take a look at these questions here. Did Adam, through the use of his mind looking for the other God, fire a charged ion particle out to the mass, to the GON, which caused a chain reaction, aka the fall? Just a thought. Your display might be... Yes, that's what it looks like, all these little balls here. Yes, exactly. It was a chain reaction. It started off as something benign and innocuous in and of itself, but one thing led to another, to another, to another, to another, and it got so out of hand, it literally led to an entire cosmic nuclear meltdown. And the Andromedan strain, yes, and a good metaphor for this is the famous book and movie, The Andromeda Strain, a virus from space brought back by men. Exactly, this is what happened. Adam went into the equivalent of outer space, higher dimensional outer space, and unintentionally he brought back this virus, and it got in, and there was no stopping it once it got in. But there actually were ways of stopping it, and this sets us up for the continuing story of why Adam even ate. Why did he eat after he knew that the virus got in and the serpent was taken over? Why did he then eat? Why didn't it stop there? And then the third question, the third stage, which we asked, why did he have sexual relations with Chava? When the whole world is a cosmic meltdown. I mean, this wouldn't even make a story, in the science fiction. Everything is undergoing catastrophic, paradigmatic collapse, and at the last minute, Adam and Chava engage in intimate relations. What is going on there? Why would Adam and Chava do that? And one other question before we stop. Is this related to his naming the animals, during which he had to know their essence? By his naming the animals, he was drawing out their essence and elevating their essence. However, there there really wasn't anything for Adam to elevate out of the virus. He, as the lesson points out, even though what he did was l'shem shamayim, he had no business. He was like the equivalent of a Kohen Gadol, the high priest, going in to a cemetery. Because a high priest, a Kohen, cannot come in contact with a corpse to prevent spiritual contamination. A Kohen simply stays out of cemeteries, so you don't come into contact with the obvious. Walking into the cemetery alone is not going to do it, necessarily. But you're certainly taking high risk. Adam was a high priest of creation. Why was he foraging around in the cosmic graveyard of creation, looking for these fractal remnants of the other God? That's the question. In any event, we see we get a much larger picture. And remember, everything we're discussing, this is just the pashat of the sod. This is not what would truly be called the true secret, secrets of the Torah. This is simply the pashat, the simple, schematic, linear-like description of the events in their more true sense of what took place. But what was really going on, you have to truly be a mikubal, a true Kabbalist for that, to understand all because the true Torah and Kabbalah talks in a completely different language. It's a mathematical language, and it's like we are lay people learning about little genetics here, right? Is this really what's going on? No, you got to be a real geneticist to really understand and appreciate it. Likewise, what we are learning, we're like lay people that are learning some of the simple concepts that we can understand and assimilate. Any other further questions? Well, we will continue in our field journey, trip, next week, now that we have a little better idea of the source of the other God and what Adam was doing and what got into the garden. And upon that, we will conclude this evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Laila Tov.
Thank you very much.